Germanic and Scandinavian peoples have always loved supernaturally laced mysteries, and the works of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle were uber popular with the reading public. So the Nordisk Company in Denmark, in Copenhagen, begins the first Sherlockian series of films. This is in 1908, and pits the detective against the evil Professor Moriarty, as well as Raffles the jewel thief. This is in Eilevensfar, also known as Sherlock Holmes Risks His Life. But it wasn't until the sixth entry in the series, the Grad Dame, this is 1909, the Grey Lady, also known as the Grey Dame, starring and directed by Viggo Larsen, that the Nordisk Company Holmes enters the realm of horror. Now, in the 14-minute film, a legend holds that anyone seeing the ghost of a woman in gray will die soon afterwards. Holmes is called in to solve the case and discovers that the culprit is a wealthy patriarch's nephew and a cross-dresser who impersonates the Grey Lady's ghost. Now, the massive success of the Grey Lady inspires German production of a Sherlock Holmes film. So the Germans decide to do their own Sherlockian series. This is Der Hound van Baskerville, the Hound of the Baskervilles. This is in 1914. This is produced by Vitascope, a big German firm, and directed by Rudolf Meinhardt, I believe. This is released in two parts. Now, part one is the first faithful adaptation of the short story. Well, actually, a novel. Although Dr. Watson's character is virtually left out of the cinematic proceedings, but the Hound in part one is a great-looking supernatural creature, a monstrous Great Dane with flaming eyes and fire emerging from its mouth. Now, part two, Das Einsame Haus, links the German Holmes to the Nordic Company series and was made by the same cast and crew, and tells of the demented cross-dressing nephew's escape from prison and his return to Baskerville Hall. He builds a submarine house, a submersible dwelling in a nearby lake, where he imprisons his uncle and cousin, played by Hanny Weiss. Now, Holmes rescues them just as the house sinks into the lake, trapping and killing, trapping and killing the nephew. Now, both parts 1 and 2 are fast-paced adventure stories, laced with elements of horror. For example, secret rooms, hidden passages, and the spectral or ghostly appearances in drag, of course, of the Grey Lady. Now, the highlight of both films is the dazzling chiaroscuro lighting and brilliant photography. The cinematography is just amazing in the German Sherlock Holmes series. Now, the films are brilliantly photographed, as I mentioned, in dazzling chiaroscuro lighting, which is the highlight of the movie. Now, Larsen left the Holmes series and was replaced first by Otto Lagoni and then by Alwin Nues, and last but not least, by Holger Rommensen. Now, the next major excursion into horror for Sherlock Holmes was part of the German series, which began with the Hound of the Baskervilles. Alwin Nues continues in the role of Holmes, which he had played briefly in Denmark. So you see there's a lot of interconnections here between Scandinavian film industry and the German film industry. Now, when Maverick producer Joseph Greenbaum leaves Vitascope, he leaves the big boy Vitascope to form his own company. He takes most of the cast and crew responsible for the first 2 episodes of that company's home series. Greenbaum immediately makes and releases 2 more installments, while Vitascope, now renamed Pagoo Films, countered this act of film piracy by releasing its own episode number 3, Das Dunkelschloss. Yes, I did say Das Dunkelschloss. Now, both German film production companies had not bothered to secure the rights from the Arthur Conan Doyle estate or Nordisk films for that matter. So there's a lot of piracy going on here. Now, the two Greenbaum films were written and directed by Richard Oswald and designed by Herman Warm, better known as the set designer for Dr. Caligari. Now, in the Greenbaum Part 3, Das Unheimlich Zimmer, Stapleton, the evil nephew, played by Frederick Kuhn, having escaped from the sinking house at the end of Part 2, returns to do more malevolent mischief to his uncle and his fiancée, this time played by Tatsana Ida, since Hanni Weiss had stayed behind at Vitascope, where she continued to play the character of Laura Lyons in the rival version of Part number 3. To complicate matters even further, Greenbaum and Oswald's Part 4, Der Sage von Hund, was submitted to the German Film Board censors before Vitascope's Part 3. So Greenbaum's already up to Part 4, while Vitascope Pagu is just releasing Part 3. Now, Greenbaum and Oswald's Part number 4 tells of Sir Henry, the uncle's evil ancestor, who killed his wife and her faithful dog, causing the ghost of the Hound to haunt the region. The German censors described the movie as a costume drama with knights. They don't mention Sherlock. They don't mention any link to Sherlock Holmes at all. Now, the cast of Part 3 simply reenacted their original roles, this time in a period setting. However, the Greenbaum-Oswald films, well, they run into legal trouble and are banned from Germany for the duration of World War I. Now, this is, of course, after the more powerful Vitascope Pagu films had lodged legal complaints against Greenbaum. The two Oswald Greenbaum Sherlock Holmes films were, however, released in Austria-Hungary and some other European nations and managed to make it to the United States before the U.S. entered the war. So he manages to distribute and make money off of it, but he can't play the films in Germany. Greenbaum re-edits both films and releases them in Germany as a single feature around 1920. Meanwhile, Pagu, Vitascope, continued the Hound of the Baskerville series, which they had started after, well, basically raiding the talents of the Danish Nordic Film Company. Vitascope's Pagu Part 3, Der Dunkel Schloss, yes, I did say Der Dunkel Schloss, well, starred Eugene Berg as Holmes, while Frederick Kuhn again played the villain, the cross-dressing and evil nephew, and Hanni Weiss remained as Laura Lyons. Now, with the war's end, 1918, Greenbaum, as I mentioned, hires some of the talent associated with the Vitascope Pagu Holmes series and releases parts 5 and 6. Dr. McDonald's Sanatorium, this is 1919, and Das Haus und Fenster, this is also 1919. To counter this move, Vitascope and Pagu re-releases a shortened version of their original 2 episodes as a single feature. Greenbaum, despite Vitascope / Pagu's best efforts, releases parts 5 and 6 of the series, initiated in 1914 at Vitascope Pagu, which was lifted and pirated from Nordisk in Denmark. This is, in fact, the 6th Baskerville film. Greenbaum simply refuses to acknowledge the existence of Pagu Vitascope's Holmes series, begun in 1914, and insisted that when he left to form his own company, he had the legal right to take his successful production personnel and intellectual ideas along with him. Vitascope Pagu, of course, disagreed. And as I mentioned, a legal battle and box office rivalry begins to run amok. Now, in the confusion that followed the defeat of Germany, Greenbaum again takes up the opportunity to continue a series he regarded as his own property. By the time of episodes 5 and 6, the story was so wildly melodramatic that it was no longer related to Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's classic novel, The Hound of the Baskervilles, except for the names of the characters, that is. What a complex and confusing production history. All right. With that thought, we're going to take a short musical break. When we return, we're going to examine the ancient Germanic legend, the medieval tale of the doppelganger, or double, a vision of oneself, the sight of which foretells disaster and or death. And we will also examine the rise of actor, producer, writer, director, Paul Weniger, a star from the Max Reinhardt theatrical troupe that becomes the first filmmaker since the great George Méliès to specialize in the supernatural. But first, some more music. This is Cindy and Bert with The Hound of the Baskervilles. Stay with us. This is God Rock Radio.